Hello, everyone. My name is Vishnu. With me today is Muiz, and welcome to the UDOS podcast. So, this is the podcast where we're going to be talking about a lot of issues that you may not know a lot about. So, today we are going to be talking about trophy hunting. So, Muiz, help me out with this. What does trophy hunting actually mean?
Okay, so first of all, thank you, Vishnu, for this opportunity. So, getting straight into it, let's start off with the context. Lah. Trophy hunting comes from two words, basically, for those that don't know. There's trophy and then there's hunting. For us to easily understand this, trophy is seen as an achievement, it's seen as something that you can be proud of. So, it is
Hmm.
something that you keep and you show to others, right? And then
Yeah.
there's the word hunting. So, the generally understood idea is hunting, you hunt animals. So putting those two words together is basically you hunt animals that are usually of high value, of high difficulty, and then you keep some kind of ornament and then you show it to other people, and that is what trophy hunting is. Usually you hunt lions or you hunt usually the more exotic animals. It usually happens in South African states and in those
Hmm.
areas. Yeah.
Like the best impression I'm getting right now is just like a white man sitting down on his couch, and then he has like a bonfire, and then there's like different animal hits. I think that's trophy hunting in a nutshell, lah, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's a clearer picture, yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so now we have an idea of what trophy hunting means. But I think there's a lot of stereotyping that happens with trophy hunting, or there's a lot of misconceptions about stereotyping. So, what do these stereotypes look like, Moise?
Okay, yeah, fair point. It's very fair idea to be brought up. So, just from the word hunting itself already brings negative connotations to it. In other
Mm,
words, you're taking the life of another being, for example. So, there are a large number of people that don't see this as something that might necessarily be helpful, might necessarily be beneficial, because the picture that you get is just one white man going to another nation, shooting down
yeah,
animals, taking it back home, right?
yeah,
You don't really see anything that comes with it. But that's the general idea. It is a negative stereotype. It is seen as something useless. You shouldn't do it. Um, some people will see it as actively harming the environment and the animals themselves. But there are certain benefits to it, which I believe we'll discuss later.
yeah. So, the main purpose we wanted to discuss this topic is because we wanted to combat that stereotyping that exists about all of these misconceptions or stereotypes that trophy hunting has. So, yeah, Moise, how does trophy hunting actually work?
Right. So, how does trophy hunting actually work? So, this is going to be a bit complex, but stay with me and you'll get a general picture of how it goes. Lah.
Right.
So, in the best case scenario, or at least in the world in which it can work best, usually in South African nations where it's most likely to happen,
Mm,
um, trophy hunting is most likely going to be heavily regulated by the government or the state
yeah.
government or whoever that's doing it. In other words, there are a lot of laws implemented to ensure that certain aspects of hunting can be controlled. For
Mm,
example, hunting certain species, the number of animals that you can hunt during each hunt, what happens to the animals after you hunt the animals,
mm,
those things are usually fall under proper regulation by the government,
okay.
and generally we can see the best case scenario in the instance in which governments understand the value of trophy hunting and don't try to bite too much of the sandwich.
Okay,
Yeah.
so usually you'll have like ministries in charge of it. Like I think Congo has like their own ministry for like taking out gorillas. I know this is not related to trophy hunting, but there's a ministry in charge for it. And sometimes you may work with like I think WWF for instance. They got a weird history on environment, but sure, whatever international bodies that have funding, like yeah, they play a role in this stuff. Um, yeah, I think that's enough about trophy hunting. So let's get straight into the benefits because whenever we talk about trophy hunting, right, we need to talk about three important issues or stakeholders. We have the environment, we have the community, and then we also have like the animals. So let's talk about the animals first. Why does trophy hunting help the animals, or how does it do so?
Okay. Good question. So firstly, I want to clarify, how does trophy hunting actually affect animals, or like
Mm,
what do people think happens to animals once you do trophy hunting? So the general idea is the fact that you have a group of hunters going out into the wild and then shoot any animal they see on sight. But
mm,
that's not necessarily true, because trophy hunting is a method of regulation and control. So if you can allocate certain areas in which animals habitat and control the kinds of animals that can be hunted,
Mm-hmm.
then it allows greater control of the animal population itself. That means when you
Okay.
see certain animals that cannot be hunted, and you can say, don't hunt this animal because it is necessary for the continuation of the business, or it's just like this animal doesn't deserve to be killed in that instance because there is potential for it to become more valuable in the future. So those are the kinds of things that happen that allow for the animal protection itself to become much better, right? So
Mm.
that's
Yeah.
that's how you
So
can regulate control of the animals.
so this is like a world where when you're hunting, the hunter or like the guider, whomever is next to you, right, will tell you you have to hunt a male animal who's like maybe 15 years old, for instance, a 15-year-old lion who's a male, so that you can control the population. I don't know. That's the impression I get. Am I right,
Yeah,
Moise?
I'm not sure if that's exactly what happens, but the example makes sense, and I'm
Yeah.
I'm I'm sure people understood that also, right?
All right. Cool. Um. So we can control the animal population because it is targeted. All right. Cool. Is there any other benefits to the animal, Moise?
Benefits for the animals. I mean, another benefits to the animals, I guess, would be protection, not necessarily from overhunting, but maybe from
Mm.
other aspects of development or urbanization in general. For
Okay.
example, the general idea is the fact that urbanization, building infrastructure is going to disproportionately affect animals, in which it's going to displace them, it's going to put them
Mm.
into scenarios where they don't necessarily have the greatest habitat, they are unable to um, mate, for example, because
Yeah.
areas are destroyed. Yeah, those things are also protected because now this area provides an economic incentive for the local government, for the government to
Mm.
protect it and to protect the animals.
Mm,
Right.
mm, mm. So, like, I think one of the most important things about trophy hunting is because you need, like, correct me if I'm wrong, you need to have like a large amount of area for these animals to exist. So you have like a mini like ecosystem, whatever the term is. Sorry about my environment knowledge. Like you'll have deers, you'll have lions, so that the lions can eat on the deers. So there you have like a mini ecosystem going on there, and then your hunters get to kill those people. So you need to have a lot of land. So I think a lot of African countries, a lot of African people, the poor people opt into like farming, for instance. So
That's
when
true.
you opt into farming, you need to burn down forests, you need to cut down trees, shoo away the lions, kill the lions, right? Disproportionately. And that's a big problem. So what trophy hunting does is you stop people from farming, and because they stop farming, now they have an incentive to work as trophy hunters or to help their business grow. Right, Maurice?
Yep, yep. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that is usually what happens. Yep.
All right, nice, nice. So now we've already established how it helps the animals. Let's talk about the community because more often than not, the communities that live near the areas where trophy hunting happens are poor people who do not have a great source of income, right? So how do these people benefit from it, Luis?
Right. So when talking about poor people, especially in this instance, the greatest idea that we can get is to help them not become as poor is by providing them
Mm,
jobs. So when
nice.
talking about this topic, there are two alternatives, two options that they can generally choose. First of all is like choosing the urbanization and development that allows for better agricultural systems, for you to plant more crops, and that allows for better work and better food sustainability, something
Mm,
along those lines. And the second is trophy hunting. So I think in this scenario, especially in South African nations, trophy hunting provides a great economic incentive. It provides better jobs for these individuals. So what are
mm,
jobs that trophy hunting can provide? So first of all, trophy hunting by itself is already less hands-on. You don't necessarily need to do as much to it, but you still
mm,
do need to do a lot of things. So there's regulation. So you need to be able to understand the land. You need to be able to identify certain species of animals. You need
correct.
to be able to identify certain areas that might necessarily be dangerous or might necessarily have especially endangered animals that needs to be
Mm,
protected. So
yeah.
those are where local citizens and local people can have a job, um, as well as other immigration and other aspects of the job that just involve international marketing in general.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's
yeah.
that. So on the comparative, when you have the normal jobs where you have not hunting, when you have agriculture, where you have farming, where you
Mm,
have rearing animals, for example, the problem is the fact, as stated before, it displaces animals, it requires urbanization, and especially right now, it's not as sustainable, especially when you have climate change taken into consideration, where you don't
yeah.
necessarily have the greatest crops and crops don't yield the greatest. And it is especially hands on, so you need to put in more hours, but you might not necessarily get as much return, at least proportionate to the amount of hours you put into working those normal industrial or urbanization jobs.
And
Yeah,
even some areas are like not arable in the first place, where farmers just try to plant crops for the sake of planting crops just to get money when the crops quality isn't that great. When you're poor communities, like you have no R&D into like what's the best crop. So it's just like rolling the dice on hoping that farming can work. Also, one more thing is because as much as the stereotype of the white man keeping a lot of bears and lions in his house is true, I think it is important that the stereotype exists because a lot of fighters or a lot of trophy hunters come from like the European continent or from the American continent, right? And when they trophy hunt, they need to pay like a large amount of fee just to hunt a lion. That means you're paying in US currency. And when you pay in US currency, the currency value is extremely big, right? So the benefit that the people in like Africa, for instance, get from just having that business or the transaction going on is so huge compared to just earning like, I don't know, 100 Zimbabwean dollars, which are like quite useless, right? Like I know you have to use a barrel to go and buy bread, for instance. But yeah, I think that the currency exchange is so important and it doesn't happen a lot in the African countries. So that's quite a
that's
big
true.
boost
That's
for the
true.
community, right?
Yep, yep.
All right. So we've already established how it helps the animals. Is there any other way it helps the community that we might have missed?
For the community, is it?
Mm.
Let's see.
Oh yeah, I
Another
just
aspect
remembered
might be
it.
for the food, right?
Yeah, yeah,
The
yeah,
food aspect.
exactly.
Yeah, yeah,
Mm.
yeah. For the food. So for food, in general, we know the idea that trophy hunting is as a sport, you do
Mm.
it for the trophy and not necessarily the meat of the animal, the skin of the animal, right?
Yep.
So in those circumstances, you usually have some leftover food, for example, and these food, if they are not taken by the hunter itself, I believe it can be donated to the local people that don't necessarily have the ability to hunt or they don't
Mm.
have the greatest condition to hunt
Mm.
animals or do any other economic prosperity or prosperous aspects for their life.
Yep.
So trophy hunting provides them an alternative that they can use food that would otherwise have gone to waste
Yeah.
and be able to sustain themselves in that way. I think that's a very big benefit for the locals also.
Yeah. Like if you do poaching, right, you never get the meat back, right? It's just whatever happens, the
Yes,
legal
yes.
market stays in the legal market. I think, yeah, that's a big benefit. Now, lastly, because trophy hunting happens a lot in Africa, right? So why is trophy hunting most strategic to happen in this continent on the most dry areas of Africa?
Right. So why trophy hunting is the most strategic to be used in Africa. So first of all, I think it's very important for us to understand what are the other alternatives that Africa has to
Mm.
bring in foreign currency, for example. There's usually three areas in which they can do it. There's first of all, there's just trading, so selling off your natural resources or
Mm-hmm.
production and selling off those products. Or the
Mm-hmm.
second one, which is tourism, in which you
Mm.
bring in other people to come and see the scenery, take pictures,
Yeah.
photo tourism generally. So they come in, take pictures, and accommodate their family and have a nice time together, right? And
Yeah.
then the third one is trophy hunting. So why trophy hunting is the most strategic is generally because the area of South African states in itself is already kind of um, tough. It's not politically stable, and they
Mm.
don't necessarily have the greatest infrastructure or the greatest equipment to cater to certain problems. For example, take health. Malaria
Mm.
is still a big problem. Access
Yep.
to healthy water, like clean water, is still a big problem. So
Like you
in
just
those
have dry
circumstances,
land in that whole area,
yeah, yeah,
right?
yeah,
You see the
yeah. So you don't really
tumbleweeds,
have water
right?
at all. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
that's true.
yeah.
That's true. So in those circumstances, I think the first steps that they need to do, maybe they can do the first two steps, but trophy hunting provides the best because it is most hands off, but
Mm.
also because it allows for people that know exactly what they're going into and getting economic activities through there. For example, take tourism, for example. The general idea is the fact that you want to bring your family here, have a nice time, but
Yeah.
Africa and South African states might not necessarily be the most accurate spot to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why trophy hunting, which is largely marketed towards professionals, towards hunters that know what they're doing,
Yeah.
is going to provide the most marketability for this kind of economic system that they want to advertise to the world. So I think
Mm.
in those aspects, it allows for the most sustainable and it allows for the most control and it allows for the most economically prosperous option for South African states or just African states in general to be able to do trophy hunting because of those reasons. Yeah.
So you may have like the most dry land, you may have disease outbreaks that might happen in certain areas, so it's not beneficial to have a lot of people. But now with trophy hunting, the dry land is the perfect place to hunt. The disease outbreak encourages less people to come to those. So this is the best way you can squeeze out the most amount of potential from that land and from your African states circumstances. So yeah, huh. So it's quite strategic for Africa in that case. Now, lastly, we cannot end this discussion without talking about the bad examples of how trophy
That's
hunting
true.
look like. So we have to entertain that way. So what do the bad
Yes, yes.
examples look like?
So the bad examples, in many of states that do have trophy hunting, the lowest common denominator in terms of problems that they have
Mm,
is usually just corruption.
mm,
In other words, where you have states that have large control over these economic activities, and then the wealth stays concentrated among the top people that are in government, and it doesn't necessarily flow down into the people that provides the most economic, prosperous situations for them. For
mm,
example, they might not necessarily have the greatest welfare. They
yeah.
might not necessarily have other economic options or other jobs in other areas that is not necessarily trophy hunting, and
Mm,
that just allows for bad systems to implement, and trophy hunting itself becomes something that is extremely privileged
mm,
and will only cement further the stereotype that trophy hunting is something negative, right? So I guess
yeah.
another bad example that usually happen is because which derives from corruption itself, is the fact that you have extremely unregulated, extremely open systems of trophy hunting where you don't
Mm, mm.
necessarily take into consideration the kinds of
Almost like
steps that
poaching
you need
now,
to
lah.
take. Yeah, poaching now, and
Mm,
then you just do it without control and those kind of things because short term might bring a lot of money, but it's
yeah.
not necessarily sustainable. So those things might not have the greatest image to be portrayed on media, and those are the kind of things that actually do result in the failure of trophy hunting in itself lah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So most of these are bad examples of what contributes to the stereotype we have today of a lot of was just anti-trophy hunting groups saying that it is just uncontrolled, it damages the environment, where it's not necessarily true. It's just the states that do it incorrectly have these multitude of problems or cause a lot of these harms. So
Yes.
the main thing I wanted to address from this podcast session, right, is to just say that trophy hunting can work and it can help a lot of stakeholders, a lot of concepts that are involved in this topic. But yeah, we do entertain the fact that it can be run badly. So the stereotyping is bad because there have been a lot of actions that have been taken to prevent the funding of trophy hunting or to reduce the incentives of trophy hunting by all of these groups that are anti-trophy hunting. So if you were to go against it, you have less funding for these activities. So yeah, I guess that's what trophy hunting is about, and that's what you need to know
Mm.
about trophy hunting. If you would like to know more about trophy hunting, description provided by the economy, where we use as a reference for today's session. And that's the end of today's podcast. My name is Vishnu. With me is Moise. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, please do give a like down below. If you don't like this video, give 2 likes down below. Subscribe to all our channels, subscribe to all our socials, links in the description, and thank you.